This show powered by AgriGold for Central Illinois, your AgriGold reps Brett Lahr. He is your AgriGold reps for Central Illinois. We are joining with Joleen Hartley from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. Joleen Hartley is a dean of the Department of Agriculture for the University of Minnesota, and also she is a dairy analyst of the University of Minnesota. We are back with our guest with Joleen Hartley from the University of Minnesota. We were joining with Joleen Hartley from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. Joleen Hartley is a dean of the Department of Agriculture for the University of Minnesota, and also she is a dairy analyst of the University of Minnesota. How are you today,
I'm
Dean?
doing,
Welcome to the show.
thanks. I'm happy to be here. I look forward to chatting about a little bit of dairy economics as well as to learn a little bit more about the types of questions you want to ask.
Let's start with our conversation about updating on the dairy markets for right now. How are things with Class 3 milk?
Yeah, it's been a few days of decreased futures prices. Right now, I looked a little bit earlier today, and it looks like what's trading right now today is around $19. And just in the month of September, we had some of our highest milk prices around $23. So the good news is that many of our dairy farmers are still able to break even with that $19 per hundredweight. Right now, their cost of production is right between that 19 and $20, including the cost of their labor and management. But we're seeing with all of the various world dynamics at play, we tend to see the dairy market, go down a little bit in the fall, but we're hoping that it'll rebound as the holiday season approaches and we have people out baking and, going to, Super Bowl parties. That tends to be when we see a lot of, our milk and different products going off the grocery shelves.
How are the input for right now with the dairy farmers?
So inputs right now, when we're looking at our different input prices, if we just look at milk price and feed cost, most of our dairy farmers have seen some of the best margins that they have in the past few years. So that means that, we're able to capitalize on those lower feed costs, especially as we see, you know, corn, grain, and soybeans being lower in the market than they have been historically. Not great news for our crop producers, but from the dairy perspective, that helps alleviate some of the pressure. I'm hearing a lot of dairy farmers are actively trying to pre-purchase some of their major supplies and lock in some lower rates since they have a pretty strong understanding of what their cost of production is right now. Um, so these are all major wins. I think the other thing that a lot of our farmers are doing right now is they've recognized that, they had some higher milk prices here at the beginning or the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. So they've tried to pay down some debt, and that is helping, lessen the burden over time, looking at some of those interest rates that they're potentially carrying from years where our dairy prices were not that ideal.
Dean, what is the dairy demand for export to Colombia? I know that you're not looking for the export numbers.
Yeah, so about 1/6 of our U.S. milk production goes into the export market, and Mexico is maybe one of well, Mexico is one of our largest export markets, but we have a lot of other countries that are interested in our products as well. It's one of the biggest growing areas for the industry. Um, when you look at Colombia, one of the reasons why it's been in the news is that they're putting an export tariff on the milk from the U.S. coming into their country, and that's something that it impacts producers here. It impacts producers abroad when we have those additional tariffs put onto products in different ways. So I think that's why you're seeing that in the news. The National Milk Producer Federation, NMPF, has some good statements out on, where they stand on that, but also how that impacts our producers. But yeah, exports, I did double check this number before I hopped on the call, is about $7.75 billion impact to the agricultural industry as a whole, or the U.S. industry as a whole. So it is exports of dairy products is a big factor into the success of the industry here in the U.S.
What is the percentage points for Mexico? Meanwhile,
Yeah. So when we look at total exports from the U.S. leaving the country, um, for dairy products as a whole, that's about 7.75 billion. And Mexico is close to about 1.8 billion of that 7.75. So a pretty substantial player in that market.
do you have any final thoughts or recap of our conversation about the feed?
Yeah, I think dairy farmers are some of the most resilient people. Now, I'll say I have my bias because I grew up on a dairy farm, but I feel like they're handling a number of things that are impacting their industry. There's that welcomed relief with higher milk prices. Now they've decreased a bit in the past month or so. But the other thing that they're navigating is avian influenza in dairy herds and identifying, what are those biosecurity protocols and practices and how is this impacting their productivity, animal health, all of those things. And we really have a strong network of people across the country helping our dairy producers navigate that and navigate it in a way that isn't negatively impacting their profitability to the best of their ability. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that because it is something that it has come to the forefront in the past 6 to 9 months, and it's something that most dairy farmers hadn't been thinking about is how can avian influenza or H5N1 impact their herd in the dairy industry, and now we're living that and working through it in the best way that we can.
Thanks, Dean. I
Thank,
enjoyed our conversation for today.
thank you so much. I'm so glad you invited me to chat, and it was great to meet you.
This is Joleen Hartley from the University of Minnesota on back roads of Illinois. Thanks to Dean. We're running out of time on our show, but you can subscribe to our show on YouTube. And whenever you get your podcast, that's been Back Roads of Illinois College Edition. I am Cesar Delgado. Have a good day.